Hollow verbs, Niphal. We've looked at the cal, now let's look at the Niphal. Here we have cum, but this time in the Niphal, and let's see. The first thing we can say, just looking at this, the way I've colored it, is that we see in the perfect and the participle, we have the nun. Okay, so you see the nun, this is the Niphal nun prefix, all the way through here. And that is just like what we have with the strong verbs. The perfect and the passive participle is where we saw the nun. In the prefix forms, the nun assimilates. All these forms here, the nun assimilates because the prefix causes it to sit next to the first root without an intermediate vowel. And so that dagesh forte there is our nun all the way through. Okay? So in these forms, it's actually pretty much just like the strong verb. We have the holum vav for the prefix, or sorry, for the theme vowel throughout the entire paradigm. We'll take a look at the second person switch here in a moment. But the theme vowel is the holum vav. So that part is different, of course, than what you'd get with the strong verbs. But other than that, the prefix forms are pretty much just like the strong verbs. So most of our attention will be focused on the perfect, as it turns out. So let's see what else I wanted to say at this point. The perfect and the participle, the nun is present. Okay, nun is present in the red forms here, just like in the strongs, just like in the strong verbs. The perfect 3ms and the participle masculine singular are the same. Nakom, nakom. Okay. In the strong verbs, we had the comets here. Remember that as the theme vowel, and I said that the comets marks the passive participle, or the participle for the passive binyan, the nifal, the pual, and the hofal. Well, in the hollow verbs, that goes to holum vav, because this is a 2-vav verb, and so these forms actually collapse, and they collapse together, and they're both the same. Nakom, nakom. You cannot distinguish the two. In the strong verbs, you can. In the hollow verbs, the hollow nifals, you can't. So that's one thing to say. So the strong verbs, the participle has the comets, and that distinguishes it. The perfect has the patach, and the participle has the comets. In the hollow verbs, they both have holum vav. The other thing to say is that this medial vav, this second vav, is visible in all the forms. Okay. In the cal, it wasn't visible in the perfect and the active participle. Remember that? It dropped out, and so you couldn't tell the difference between second vav and second yud. In the nifal, it's visible everywhere. Okay, in cal, it's not visible in the perfect and the participle, active participle, actually. Okay, let's look at this second person switch. This is like a second person switch on steroids because there's actually 3 things that happen. What we've noted before in the second person switch is that you tend to get a reduction of the theme vowel. You get some change in the theme vowel, usually a reduction. Now what we see is 3 things happening. The first is we have our comets prefix. I should have said that before. We have our comets here marking the nifal nun prefix. We don't have it over in the imperfect. In the cal, we saw it here. In the nifal, we see it over in the perfect. Anyway, so we have our comets, but when you put these consonantal suffixes on, we get a reduction of that comets to a shava. This is propritonic reduction, and it happens in all these forms. Okay, I don't mean this one, but all these forms and these forms, not just the ones with the heavy suffixes, even these ones here. So that's the first thing that happens: reduction of the nifal nun prefix vowel, comets to shava. The second thing that happens is the holum vav goes to a shuruk, so that reduces. That's what we've normally seen for a second person switch, is that we get vowel reduction for the theme vowel. The third thing is we have a helping vowel. There's a holum right there, and here, and on these ones as well. So we have 3 things: propritonic reduction of the prefix vowel, reduction of the theme vowel, and the addition of a helping vowel. So this is nikumota. Okay, so quite a lot of change here. Now, if you're going to memorize principal parts for these weak verbs, which is what I suggested in my strategy on how to learn Hebrew verbs. When you get to this form here, and we'll see that there's some other forms that have this as well, you may want to write down the 2ms form. Normally principal parts are just the first form, right, for each of these paradigms. So you'd write nakom down and then yakom or whatever. Somewhere off to the side, maybe you want to put down this here, just because it is quite different. It's got 3 things that are different. Okay. So what do I want to say here? What have I said? Second person switch occurs in the perfect, just like the Hiphil and other forms that we've seen. And what this amounts to is, normally, so far, is a change in the theme vowel, usually reduction. But in addition to that change in the theme vowel, that reduction of the theme vowel, we have 2 other things that happen in the Niphal. The first is proprytonic reduction. This is that comments before all consonantal suffixes, not just the heavy consonantal suffixes, not just the CVCs, but the CVs as well. So that's, if you don't follow the terminology, that's this first one here, okay? Comments to Shava. That's this point. This is the theme vowel switch. This is comments to Shava. And then we have this additional helping vowel, the holum. That's over here. So we have a 3-part second person switch. What we normally see, and then 2 additional parts as well. Now this second person switch on steroids, or whatever we want to call it, this 3-part second person switch in the perfect, we will see that we've seen it here in the Niphal for the hollow verbs. We'll also see it in the Hiphil for the hollow verbs, and then we'll see it in all the geminates. Okay? So if you look at your charts at the back of the book in Ross, page 553, we don't see this heavy-duty second-person switch in the Cal of the hollow verbs, but we do in the Niphal, the Hiphil, and then we don't in the Hofal. You turn the page over, and you look at the perfect for the geminates. Well, we'll go through this in detail, but it exists for Cal active, Cal stative, Niphal, Hiphil, and Hofal. So that's an important feature. And if you're going to learn these by principal parts, then for all those forms, I would put in the second-person switch, or the 2ms form, to represent the second-person switch, so that you have some idea as to what the helping vowel is and what the changes are. So most of the features that we need to pay attention to for the hollow Niphals are in the perfect, and it mostly surrounds this second-person switch thing. We have our comments that marks in the perfect, not the imperfect, for the Niphal. We have holum throughout everything else. A holum theme vowel. And what I want to say about the imperfects, the nun assimilates as Dagash 40 just like the normal Niphal, the Niphal in the Strongs. So, yeah. So all I want to really say here, or most of what I want to say, pertains to the perfect.